We are done with the design research part, and we're going to move on to the Femme part.
At SMART, like you guys know, I'm part of a group called the Femme, and the Femme is a dedicated group of people made up of researchers, engineers, business leaders, and designers.
And we're really there to develop expertise in this area, in the area of design and gender. At SMART, we spend a lot of time focusing on user needs and the emotional side of design. And through our work and relationships with companies, we realized that a lot of companies were having a really difficult time understanding and connecting with women. They were taking a lot of the wrong approaches and were really relying on stereotypes of the past. So I just want to illustrate two really good examples of why you would want to become an expert in design and gender, or why a company should have experts on design and gender. So according to Steve Boland, who is the president of the British Orthopedic Sports Trauma Association in England, more than 9 out of 10 of the ACL injuries, injured skiers are women with an average age of about 40. And this is due to the difference between the physiology between men and women, and the binding design and setup. Due to, if you guys look at the illustration of the hips over there on the left side, due to their wider hips, women have a larger Q angle than men, and this forces more pressure onto their knees when they twist. So, you know, my hip is wider, so it really puts more strain on the ligaments inside of my knee. So when you fall, the ski bindings, if they don't release, then the rigid and high boots funnel all that stress directly to your knee, and that can cause injuries. And current ski bindings are designed and set to release with the amount of force that a male exerts on them. So essentially, they're designed for the male body, and they're just made smaller for the female, which ends up with a lot of injuries. It might seem obvious now that I'm telling you this, that, you know, this is something that we shouldn't be doing, but it's still being done today, and a lot of people don't realize that there's a huge difference between men and women in the way our bodies are built, and so that should be considered in design. So our second example, does anybody know who designed this compact? Hint, 1955. Oh. Okay. Surprisingly, it was Dodge, the car company, yeah. In the 50s, Dodge launched La Femme car, a driving experience designed just for women. It was pink inside and out. It came with a stylish rain cap, a chic matching umbrella, and a makeup bag. And it was on the market for about 2 years and was discontinued to poor sales. And while we think this is very stereotypical, and we might think, like, wow, like, I wonder what they were thinking, who would ever buy this? Sadly, 60 years later, we have Della. Della by Dell. It was a laptop designed with women in mind. And note the nice palette of blue, green, and pink that match their t-shirts, their shirts. So Dell set out to design a complete female computing experience. If you went to their website, you could find shopping links, dieting tips, recipe books, a handy calorie counter, just in case you need it, and even mini accessories that match the laptops. Believe it or not, Della by Dell was released in 2009. That's 2 years ago. And not surprisingly, the entire website was taken down 10 days after it was launched due to consumer outrage. So yeah, the world has changed a lot, and women have changed a lot over the past 60 years, from the early 1990s all the way to today. But products really haven't kept up. Companies knew back then that the women's market was really important, but looking at products on the market today, companies are still relying on stereotypes of the past to connect with women, resorting to an approach we call shrink it and pink it. So just like slapping pink on, you know, whatever they think would work for women, and taking the male body as an average and just shrinking the products for them. And we need to realize that women aren't miniature men, and that while some females do like pink, and it does sell, they're actually quite a small number who do like it, and quite a large number who don't. So as you've seen, a lot of guesswork or simple ignorance happens when designing for women. So our goal as the FemDen is to bridge the gap between assumptions and realities about women to explore the underdeveloped opportunity for good design. So our mission really is to save good women from bad products, but also just to design products that work for both men and women. So we suspect that the industry as a whole has had a difficult time understanding female perspectives because there really hasn't been a lot of women around. There are only about 20% women in industrial design. But she's really influencing 85% of the purchases that are made. She's shopping on behalf of herself and her family. And she's ultimately deciding what's going to be selling. So it's really important for companies to pay attention to what she has to say and to stop resorting to stereotypes. So in order to design good products, we all have to make an effort to find the female perspective. So what I'm going to be talking about in the next part is really explaining who modern day women are, why companies are struggling to connect with them, what we can do to design better products, and what the new sensibility of feminine is. So understanding who modern day women are is very important in understanding how we can design for them. And we all know that there are differences between men and women, but those differences aren't always as obvious as one would expect them to be. And as designers, we really take these differences into consideration. So we're going to do a quick exercise. If I can get just 2 girls and 2 guys to come up right here. You would like some? Sure, yeah. Yes. All right. So can you come right here, please? Okay, so hold hands and pretend that you got, the 2 of you hold hands and the 2 of you hold hands and pretend you're walking down the street. All right, so now switch. What? Switch the position of the hands. Switch position? Yeah, so you guys were holding it like that, now hold it the other way. No, the other way. It's pretty confusing, right? Yeah, that's pretty challenging. So, okay, so you guys did it interesting. Anyway, the point is, yeah, well, which one's more comfortable? This way. That way, right? How about you guys? Which one's more comfortable? Yeah. So basically, we've been doing this exercise a lot, and we noticed this in, sorry, okay, you guys can sit back down, because I have a slide showing the position you guys had on the next one. Okay, so basically, we just did this exercise, and we noticed that it was more comfortable for the girls to hold their hands with their palm facing up, and it's more comfortable for guys to hold hands when their palm is facing down. So, you know, there aren't many studies that really show this or any scientific facts, but understanding gender differences isn't always black and white. As we've experienced in this exercise, there are a lot of subtle and unspoken rules about what we do as a female and what we do as a male. And so understanding those behaviors and understanding all those unspoken rules is really important to recognize as a designer and take those into consideration while you're designing. So always be on the lookout for these little interesting things and write them in your notebook because they'll be helpful later on. So here are some more differences between men and women that are based more on science. The one we just did wasn't really based on science, but it was based on observation, which is very important. So the differences between men and women, most It's mostly hormones that define us. Chromosomes decide our sex, but ultimately hormones influence much of our behavior. And the major hormone affecting women is estrogen. It's a hormone relating to strong nesting and nurturing feelings. Progesterone is a hormone that's released when she sees what we call releaser shapes. So big head, big eyes, short and stumpy body. You'll hear a lot of women go, "Oh my God, it's such a cute baby," or, you know, "It's such a cute dog." And, you know, women can't take themselves from saying those, and men oftentimes just look at us like we're crazy. It's progesterone. Oxytocin is a hormone that promotes a sense of partnership. When women are in stress, they release this hormone, and it triggers an urge to talk. And serotonin, that's why we talk a lot. Serotonin is a hormone that dampens the desire to take risks and thrills. So men tend to have less of this hormone. They still have a little bit, but just a little bit. So this can lead to higher susceptibility of boredom for them and the desire to seek adventure. The major hormone affecting men is testosterone, and it's responsible for male characteristics such as competitiveness, drive, self-reliance, aggression. And studies have also shown that it's responsible for traits traditionally considered learned or inherited, like spatial awareness, mathematical and mechanical abilities. And in a study that was done on a mental rotation test, boys consistently outperformed girls, and we suspect that this might be a reason why there are fewer women in industrial design and engineering. And there was one interesting study we read. It was an English company that took into account how a lot of women physically turn the map over to the direction that they're going. And I'll actually do that too. I can't read a map from the reverse side. So they basically flipped all the names for both sides so it can be read easily. And 15,000 orders came from women and only a handful came from men. So it's really important to understand these differences that are just inherently built in us. And I forgot to flip through the slides while I was talking. Sorry. So according to various sources, women represent the largest market opportunity in the world, but we found out that companies aren't connecting with women in a meaningful way. 71% of women feel that brands only consider them for beauty products and cleaning products. It's pretty sad. 74% of women feel misunderstood by the automotive industry. I certainly do. Being short and having to wear a seatbelt and driving, it always hurts my neck. And once I actually got a ticket for it because I was so annoyed at the seatbelt that I took the seatbelt and put it under my armpit, and I got a ticket for it. Why didn't the automotive industry consider my height? They haven't, and they should. 84% of women feel misunderstood by the financial services, and only 1% of women feel considered by the consumer electronic industry. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. So let's look at why companies are struggling to connect. We see that there are 4 main obstacles to overcome if you're interested in connecting with the female market. We need to get over stereotypes, conventional methods, oversights, and the fact that there are no women in, or let's say few women in the executive levels, which we'll get into in a bit. So the first one is that a lot of companies are still relying on stereotypes of the past. Gender roles are blurring. Women are often doing traditionally male tasks and vice versa, each with varying success. And while taking on these new roles, females specifically have to adapt to products and services that weren't really designed with them in mind. And we're actually seeing this with men too. We're seeing a rise in stay-at-home dads. And actually one of the designers at Smart just wrote a great article about about the blurring gender roles on Fast Company. If you guys go to Fast Company's website, the FemDen actually has blog posts. I think we post like every other week. And Brooke, one of the designers, just posted something about this, so I encourage you guys to go on that website and check it out. It's also a great website you guys should go on every day to check out what's going on in the design and business world. Women are diverse, and we see a lot of this oversimplified and superficial ways of designing for women, like the shrink it and prink it approach that we talked about. And while this approach may appeal to some women, the majority of women really don't connect with it. And it's really important to understand moods and modes. We recently did a project where the client had a segmentation map where they identified 5 different consumers. So a segmentation map is when you're trying to figure out the different user groups for a specific category or specific product that you're working on. And they lumped the women in one group, the so-called soccer mom group. And during our work, we found that you couldn't put the women in one segment. They actually crossed over all 4 segments because she was in different modes. She was, you know, a mom. She's also a chef when she's cooking, and she can be a teacher when she's helping her kids out with homework. And conventional methods really won't take you to new places. First and foremost, you need a brave leader, and we all miss Steve Jobs because he was a really great, brave leader. A leader who is willing to go beyond the tried and true, and someone who's willing to dig deeper and not just settle for what they already know and might sell. You also need to communicate differently and understand that men and women communicate differently. Recently, we did a project with an international bottling company about a night out on town, and we were having focus groups in a conference room, a gray conference room, and we were just like, we're not going to get any useful information. You know, we need to kind of go back to some of those activities that I talked about earlier, whether it's a girl chat or a guy chat, trying to create a more comfortable environment, or going out with them to actually experience what a night out means. So traditional focus groups and structured conversations really don't always offer deep insights. And you know, you should spend more time with her, and we went into this a little bit in the first section about spending more, while you spend more time with her, you can really understand the subtleties that you really wouldn't have gotten in a traditional interview. And there are a lot of oversights in the design industry with significant implications, so I just want to take a look at a few of these. We went through the first one with the example in the beginning of the ACL injuries. But to emphasize this point again, because it's really, really important and it's still being overlooked, men and women's bodies are built differently and function differently, so let's not forget that. Secondly, we have psychological differences. Apart from hormonal differences, we have psychological differences. Men have more gray matter making up their brain. Gray matter is the center within the brain that processes information. And this means that men's brains tend to be more localized, specialized, and efficient at focusing on one task at a time. But women have more white matter, and white matter brain tissue is something that wires different processing centers together, making the structure more distributed, connected, and better at integrating. And that's why women tend to be better at multitasking. And women have life stages that we need to consider. When a woman moves into a new life stage in her life, her needs change. If you're pregnant and driving, and if the airbag inflates, it could actually be harmful to you and potentially kill your unborn child. And also in talking with mothers, we found that when trying to balance strollers and car doors, they're practically one-armed because they have the kid in the other arm, so they need to create, they need to do a lot of things they would normally do with one arm. And actually one great stroller out there that we found was this mini city stroller. You can actually open the stroller and close the stroller with one hand, which is pretty much the only stroller out there that it can be done like that, which is great. And in the product design industry today, only 20% are women. So companies really need to work extra hard to find the female perspective. Stats show that female employment drops off at the executive and senior leadership levels. A good first step towards gaining market share might be to put more women at the top, where they can make key decisions on what resonates with female consumers. Women trust women and are more likely to open up to one another. A great value of having a woman on a team is their ability to interpret what's valuable to other women. And mixed teams, really brings a balanced perspective. If it's an all-woman team, you can easily get stuck in your own female world and vice versa. So by having a balanced team, you can avoid stereotyping yourself and the opposite gender, because women and men think differently, and this undoubtedly affects the design process. So as we just saw, there are many traps you can fall into while trying to consider gender. So first and foremost, you have to start with her life and not the product. Start with her reality and not your own. Because if you don't take these obstacles seriously and strive to overcome them, this is where you might tend to end up. As soon as a product becomes a woman's product, it becomes suspect of poor design and poor quality. So you really need to dig deeper. And it's important to ask yourself, well, when is it okay to express femininity? Products you surround yourself say a lot about who you are to other people. They're a reflection of who you are. So in the workplace, especially in more corporate environments, we often hear that women don't want to call attention to their femininity. So whipping out a pink phone in the board meeting is out of question. But with clothes, it's different because you can dress feminine and masculine whenever you want. Clothes are a changing statement, but a product is more often a permanent statement. So sometimes the same woman wants to be feminine and sometimes she wants to be masculine. She's in different mindsets when she's tackling different tasks. So when starting a new project, it's really important to ask a very fundamental question. Is your product going to be used by men only, women only, or by both? Should we design just for her, or should we design to include her or to include him? So certain things like birth controls will always be for women. However, when there's something that we all do, like driving a car, women don't want to be singled out. A general rule of thumb is if it's related to physical differences between us, there's going to be important things that we need to take into consideration. So if the product is going to be used by women only or men only, then we need to take what we call the visible approach. This approach is mostly related to physical differences. And the transparent approach is about being inspired by women's demanding needs, yet developing solutions that are appreciated by both men and women. So on many levels, we think that transparency is the future of most products, not all, most, and where it's the approach that will consider both genders equally. So I'm going to take you through some case studies, and I think we're doing pretty good on time. So we're going to do a case study for the visible approach first. We did a project about home pregnancy tests. And this is a product that falls under visible approach because it's only designed for women. However, it still falls short. There are many different women who buy pregnancy tests. They're the ones who have problems getting pregnant, the hopeful positives, the ones who are devastated to find out they're positive, and then the relieved ones who find out that they're not pregnant. But if you've ever interacted with a pregnancy test before, you probably have noticed that the words on the packaging and the tone of the packaging are all for the pro-pregnant woman. They kind of ignore the people who don't want to get pregnant. So the challenge is that all these different women have to buy the same product. And that's okay, because we don't want to be making 4 different types of pregnancy tests for 4 different users. We want to try to understand all these 4 groups and design a product that will speak to all 4 of them. So how do you design one product for all these different women? You really need to consider the whole experience, first of all. Often when companies come to us, they'll just want to redesign the product. But the product is really only part of the equation. If you're serious about getting in touch with women, you have to consider every touch point of your brand experience and make sure you go about it in a way that's female friendly. So when women analyze the whole brand experience, she's thinking very holistically. She's thinking about all these different touch points, from advertising to your website, to the store experience, to customer service, and really trying to understand whether she shares the same values as your brand does. So it's not only about one thing, it's about the summary of many things that makes it a good experience for women. So for instance, at the store, she has a very anxious state of mind. She's at the aisle, which is usually very close to the pharmaceutical counter, where everyone's always hanging out and kind of staring at you and seeing what you're buying. So in a way, she kind of wants the product to be camouflaged and not illustrate, and show everyone that she's about to go home and take a pregnancy test. And these are some things, that are going in her mind. Can I make it less obvious that I'm carrying a pregnancy test? I hope there's no one in the aisle. I don't want anyone to see me. So for this project, we found that there was so much anxiety between purchase and use of the product. She was shy about buying the product, confused and concerned about how to set it up and use it when she got home, and was really wondering whether she was even doing it right. So it wasn't really about the ergonomics or the physical packaging itself. The opportunity really was to build a relationship with her and provide the right tone and content at the right time. So understanding how she feels in all of these moments throughout the experience is really important. So now we're going to take a look at the transparent approach, designing for both men and women. The first example is the Cardinal Health medical scrubs that were recently released on the market. We learned that surgeons see themselves as superheroes. We did a lot of interviews with surgeons because on a daily basis, they really make the impossible happen and they save lives. And this makes them, well, superheroes, I think. And a superhero's uniform nicely reflects their wonderful abilities. They have a nice white cape that makes them look empowering, proud of what they do, showing off their brand logo in the front. Their outfits fit perfectly on their body, and each part is fully integrated. They're stretchable and breathable, fully enabling them to perform at their best. And they even, sometimes have gender-specific uniforms, ensuring that each superhero is appropriately dressed. But the reality is that when you see a surgeon, they look far from superheroic. This is an image of a surgeon, not empowering, feels like, she's in pajamas. The scrub uniform, it doesn't really feel that empowering. The effects is particularly bad for female surgeons who's forced to wear a unisex scrub, which is actually based on the male body, and this is what we found out through our research. Beyond just the sloppy look, when she kneels down to get something, the V-neck exposes her breasts, which is really annoying. All surgeons complained about this. And she's constantly dealing with severe chafing from pants, from having too long of a rise, which makes it really painful to walk. So a very simple thing and something they have to do a lot in the hospitals, walk, becomes painful. And the pants don't fit her hips because they're based on the male hips. And a lot of them don't have pull strings, so they kind of come up with their own solution. So, they pull and have a lot of discomfort. So in the research that we did in the operating rooms that were conducted by Smart Design and Cardinal Health, which was they were our client, the team found that most of the products simply didn't really work well for women. And there's an illustration here showing some of the differences between men and women. So to begin with the very basics, women were poorly served with the unisex scrubs. And if you saw both a woman and a man standing side by side wearing these scrubs, it was pretty obvious that the scrubs had been designed for the male. So these are the scrubs that we designed and have been doing pretty well, actually. It really illustrates product design that meets the needs of both genders. We took cues from sports apparel for a more professional look and better in performance, so it's more breathable as well. The scrubs feature an adjustable waistband to modify the rise, accommodating women's hips while remaining comfortable for men. So it still considers both genders, but it takes the female body and adjusts it for the male as well. And they also have a collar that prevents the peekaboo exposure. Furthermore, we heard many women voice how much time they spent and effort they spent to become surgeons. And when they reached this professional position, they had to work in uniforms that didn't make them feel professional and that didn't make them feel empowering. So in response to this, we did a lot of detailing to these scrubs to reflect a traditional medical look, but really improve the way it looked professionally. So the scrubs are a perfect example of transparent design by integrating the female perspective and listening to the complaints and concerns and studying the female body. And so far it's been appreciated by both. So I have one more case study to do, and I think we're good on time, so I'll just go for it. And we'll still have time for Q&A. So this was a product that was designed by Smart, and it's a great example of femden thinking. But to understand why it was so successful, we're going to dig a little bit deeper, and I'll share a couple more insights that we've come up with in regards to how men and women think and look for products. So women tend to ask for directions, and men tend to not. It's one of the many stereotypical gender differences from which we all have humorous and not so humorous stories to share. And we can be lost as ever, but stopping at a closest gas station to ask for directions can sometimes be just out of the question for men, because we'll eventually get there. But I want to explore this stereotypical behavior just a little bit more to understand why this might be happening. Because we really need to understand that men and women think and process information differently, and this affects the way we work, the way we mate, the way we buy products, and really it ultimately comes down to our origins of being hunters and gatherers. Males and females are different animals. Men tend to want to pathfind, and it's part of the hunting instinct. So when shopping, men tend to go linear and deep, researching a product in detail, and then really going in for the kill. So they research the product, buy it, and use it. Men are usually fascinated by the product first, and then the lifestyle. Whereas women are a little bit more all over the place. They tend to go wide. They're gathering for both themselves and the tribe, for both themselves and the family. So they're thinking about a lot of different things. They're thinking about, well, is it going to be safe for my kid? How will it fit into my house? Will my dog eat it? And while he tends to be more fascinated by the product itself, she's enticed by the sum of many things, including considerations beyond herself and her personal needs. So for women, she's more fascinated about the lifestyle than the product. And for men, he's more fascinated by the product and then the lifestyle. So when a problem occurs, men and women often have different attitudes. When a male acquires a new tech gadget, he tends to have more patience. His instinct is to conquer and overcome. And I just want to use tends to because You know, we've done a lot of research, we've read a lot of books, we've interviewed a lot of people, but there's obviously some people who don't fall into these specific categories. I have a female friend who loves figuring out techie stuff and gadgety stuff. So this is, you know, overall learnings that we found. So his instinct is to conquer and overcome. To be considered knowledgeable, competent, and self-sufficient really gives him a sense of self. Men, you know, have historically been the providers, so this concept of mastering a product is really a big motivation for him. And the beauty is in understanding the ins and outs of how it works. This, of course, is important to women as well, but in general, she's enticed by what the product can do for her. And women are very busy. Many of them work, and they're still the primary caretakers of families. So she tends to have less of a tolerance for time-consuming and poor product experiences. She wants a product to work well right from the start. A woman we knew actually said it really nicely. She said, I don't want technology to suck up my time, I want my kids to suck up my time. And it's a matter of really prioritizing and understanding her patients. So women prioritize intuitiveness in products, so conquering a product really provides less satisfaction for her. So when we look at the world of consumer electronics, there's a lot of focus on what we choose to call the cold values. The cold values are all about sleek styling, speed, latest and greatest, the latest and greatest materials, the 1 extra gigabyte. And historically, industrial design and consumer electronics were really based on an engineering and male industry and developed from really a technological and manufacturing point of view, where it was mainly about the machine. This current technology focus of the colder values is still important. We still need the extra gigabyte and the styling, but we really need to understand that there's a new place for warmer values as well. We need to care for her, and we need to think about not only her relationship to the product, but also how the product fits into her life and how it can affect other people. We need to smarten the product up. Not all features add to a product experience. They actually might subtract. Remember that your average user isn't a power user. And smartening a device doesn't necessarily mean that you're dumbing it down. The iPhone is a very simple device to use, and it's very smart as well. We need to celebrate the end results. So she cares less about the physical product itself. What she cares more is about the end result, but she still cares about the product. While we say she cares about it less, we still have to consider what the product looks like. And we need to realize that she's time pressed. Maybe the end result can be about saving time. So we really need to understand what the root problem and the root motivations of using that product is. And we really want to bring it to life. Lindsay, one of the ladies we had for a consumer electronic chat, really expressed her love for her Roomba. And she wasn't talking about its high functionality or any product benefits. She was really in love with it in a different way. She talked to it, she scolded at it when it missed a spot. She praised it for a job well done. She told it to go to sleep and recharge. And I don't think Lindsay's crazy. Lindsay just has a deep emotional connection to her Roomba. And of course, if her Roomba didn't work well, it would have never earned her love. So it's really great to bring unexpected personality and magic and fun to things like cleaning, where, you know, it can sometimes be a chore. So try to think about making things fun for activities that aren't so fun. Think about all the cool things that you can do with technology and bring personality. And we want to remember that while we want all these warm values, we really don't want to forget about the cold values either. They need to coexist together because, like I said, we do need that extra RAM as well. So going back to the HP PhotoSmart printer, this is something that we designed a few years ago. HP had a new technology for making smaller photo printers, and we realized that early on the success of this project would really rely on HP connecting with a fundamentally different audience. And through our research, we found out that women are the primary caretakers of family photos, from taking to archiving to printing and storing them in the albums and sharing it to others. So we did a lot of research, in-home ethnographies, shop-alongs, all those things that we talked about earlier tonight. And we found out that the key insight was that women like to share memories on the go. And that became the vision for the printer that we designed. So early photo printers, similar to the photo on the left, were loaded with features and buttons and made real high quality prints, but you had to plug them in the wall and they were big and stationary. The HP photo printer that we designed was small and portable. It even had a handle suggesting that you could carry it around. You didn't have to plug it in. You didn't have to hook it up anywhere. You could just take it with you, put your memory card in it, and press print. So it was really an easy one-touch setup button that it kind of, you press the button and it kind of flowers open. The interface is very intuitive to navigate, and you can select and edit your image and print. So this printer really fulfilled a lot of the warmer values that we were talking about, and it celebrated what she truly cares about, memories that she can share instantly. So to summarize some of the points in the FemDen presentation, the FemDen is often asked by clients, what is femininity now? What is the new feminine, the new sensibility to feminine products? And it's not so much about femininity and masculinity and dividing between the two. It's more about understanding and celebrating our similarities and differences. And there's a new sensibility emerging that's appealing equally to both men and women. And when we're thinking about it, we have to think about how she feels, how he feels, what the whole experience is like, how we think differently, what are our different life stages, what are some warmer values that we can bring, and is it going to be a visible approach or a transparent approach when we're designing. So by being inspired by women's preferences, we can find an opportunity and solution that's appreciated by everybody. So we can maybe ultimately consider women as a good filter for designing for everybody. Thank you.